I'm John.
I'm Rob.
And this is the Mint One podcast,
where we talk all things NFTs and the rise of blockchain gaming.
So Rob, for the second week in a row, we have a very special guest.
We do. This week we have Matthew Thwaites, Guild Lead at Big Time.
Matthew, it's great to have you joining us on the Mint One podcast this week. How are you doing today, my friend?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Awesome. So your role at Big Time is as Guild Lead. Now, gets another one of those kind of Web3 terms, so to speak. Could you kind of explain what your role is within the Big Time team?
It's interesting that you say it's a Web3 term because I actually think it harkens back more to Web2. When you think of something like World of Warcraft, where those were kind of the quintessential guilds. You had your Alliance, you had Horde, but in the last couple of years, it's taken on somewhat of a different definition. And when we talk about guilds in Big Time, we're actually probably closer to the Web2 definition than to the Web3 one. Essentially, guilds are large player unions, people who team up together, work together, run through dungeons, and then also own some NFTs as well. They're a big part of our community. They're a big part of the way they run through their games. And I try to be their single point of contact into Big Time. So if they have questions about blockchain or the game or upcoming releases, I'm the button they're able to push and come to.
Awesome. So, obviously, you're talking to two massive MMO fanboys here in me and Rob. So, both of us are, very familiar with guilds and with, being a part of these kind of massively multiplayer RPG worlds. But from a guild perspective and from a kind of a collective group kind of party gameplay experience, what will Big Time offer that's different from your traditional Web2 games, your World of Warcrafts, your Final Fantasies, Guild Wars, etc.?
The main thing is innovative gameplay and ownership of items. Those two things, honestly. So our game is MMO style for sure, but it's a different style. There's no doubt on that one. It's like a mixture of World of Warcraft and Diablo in terms of gameplay, but it definitely does look different. And one of those things that's different is the character classes, which I'm sure we'll dive into here shortly. But you can switch between multiple character classes almost instantly inside of the game, and that's different, and it allows future gameplay expansions into a variety of different ways. But the main thing is the ownership. So I would argue that in a lot of Web2 games, you don't really own your items. You rent them. You buy them from the game manufacturer, and then you can use them inside the game, but there's limits to what you can do. You can't sell them. You can't change them. You certainly can't move them outside of the game. But by putting those items on chain or onto NFTs like we did, you do have that ownership. You can move them outside the game. You can trade them, and that's a pretty big change, particularly for people who really value cosmetics.
Yeah, the game actually reminds me a little bit of WildStar. I'm not sure if you ever played it. It was a flash in the pan in the MMO world. It was yet another WoW killer that didn't go ahead and do any killing, but it was honestly a brilliant game, and there's some parallels, and it was a real shame it didn't work out. One thing I wanted to ask about ownership. So obviously we're big proponents of ownership in gaming, and we firmly believe that Web3 will be an important step for the games industry as a whole. However, there's one common flaw, and I'd be interested to know how Big Time is going to overcome that, and that is pay to win. With ownership comes the opportunity for people to buy their way to the top of any game. And although it is counterable, not every game has managed to. Is that something Big Time have looked at?
Yeah, we don't have any pay-to-win mechanics inside of our game, so it makes it pretty easy. So there are NFTs, there is land, but none of them contribute to in-game statistics or in-game advantages. So the items are cosmetic. They're like skins. They're skins that you can map over your swords or your weapons to change your appearance, but they don't give you a competitive advantage. And then while we do have land NFTs, it's really with the intent of forging and making your own cosmetics. So if you'd like to make stuff, similar experience like what Minecraft players are used to, then you can do that inside of Big Time, but our mechanism is going to take place through space, which is our land.
Okay. Awesome. I think from from a traditional gamer's point of view, and as gamers, we inherently hate pay-to-win mechanics. I mean, just look at Diablo Immortal a couple of months back. It's glad to hear that Big Time's taking that stance. That, we're going to have NFTs, but we're not going to be play-to-win. We're going to do things in a way that's more kind of friendly to the players, let's say. So you touched a little bit on the types of NFTs in Big Time there. So from what I read on the website, what I've experienced playing the game myself, you've got your cosmetic NFTs, you've got utility, and then space NFTs. They're all obtainable either via gameplay or via the marketplace. And I saw there was a little kind of quote in your white paper. It was along the lines of Big Time will never require you to pay to play any additional content in the game. So obviously that's not the case at the moment, but I wanted to ask that would there be, or will there be any plans, or are there any plans in future for there to be any NFTs in Big Time that can't be obtained via regular gameplay?
No. Short answer is there's no plans. I was trying to think if there was even... there's certainly no discussions of it. I guess theoretically, hundreds of years from now when the game is largely taken over the world by storm.
Absolutely.
No, there's no plans for that. And just to clarify, I mean, it's a free-to-play game right now. You do need a pass to get in. That pass really is similar to a code that a traditional gamer is able to acquire, and it just enables you to have access into the game, but you can't pay for it. And you can only get it from either a Big Time person or from one of our trusted partners. And if anybody tries to sell those passes, we actually ban those accounts pretty quickly.
That's what I'd like to hear. Yeah, exactly. And I would be remiss if I weren't to plug that Token Gamer is one of those trusted partners, and we're giving away 50 Ruby passes right now on tokengamer.io. So I want to talk about the NFTs a little bit more, because I think space is a bit of a confusing one if you haven't looked into it. So when you guys first sent me a link to the spaces, I was trying to work out they're utility heavy from what I can tell. But if someone were to go on nft.bigtime.gg, which is your marketplace, you'll see that they range from sort of $100 all the way up to multiple thousands of dollars for this game item. Could you explain to the listeners what spaces are, why they're, a key part of the game, and how they differ, how they differ from the price ranges?
Okay. So what are they? Aesthetically, in your mind, the image I want you to have is think as each space is a room in a house. And it's modular. So if you have more space, it's like adding more rooms onto your house. And it all starts with your personal universe. Everybody's got at least one. And then as you get more space, you essentially bolt that onto each one. So if you have 100 space, you're going to have 100 rooms. If you're going to have just one space, then it's just going to be one extra room. But inside of that space, you really do control the layout, the look of it, and then ultimately adding the utility NFTs, which I'll get into next. The idea is something like what you saw in The Sims. It's a very customizable area. What do you do with it? You use it for, one, as a communal hangout area for you and some of your trusted friends or guild partners, and then two, to forge NFTs. So if you want to make your own stuff, then you need to have space, and then to enable your forges or armories, where you can then make those items. They all bolt onto space. And so as you bolt them on there, you can forge and make your own stuff. In terms of the price and the rarity, and the size of it, larger spaces have like a larger square footage on the inside. Square meterage, I think, for some of the European crowd that is out there. I think I got that right.
We do a bit of both.
Yeah. And more rare items can create more rare NFTs. So rare items right now generally range in the quantity of thousands, whereas an exalted item is closer to single digits.
Cool. Okay. Let's go away from the kind of the serious, your Q&A format and into a completely kind of out of left field question here. What's your favorite class in Big Time?
I think I'm going Chronomancer.
Ooh, good choice.
I spent most of the last few months doing as a time warrior to not much success. and Chronomancer is going a lot better, a lot more quickly.
Oh, Rob, I wonder what your kind of stereotypical MMO character is. Are you the healer? You strike me as a healer.
Oh, I don't like that I strike you as a healer. I want to strike you as a warrior that happens to heal. But yes, I do. I've played a healer for 10 years. Although I was playing Time Warrior on big time, so I'm having an identity crisis. But fortunately, and I'm too pleased with this segue not to point it out. We could talk about how the classes work in big time, because it's not the typical World of Warcraft where you pick a character, dump 1,000 hours in, and if you don't like your class anymore, well, that's that. So, Matt, can you tell us a little bit about how classes work?
When you start the game, you can pick one of 4 character classes. And as you continue to play, you can pick up these items that are called pocket watches. Pocket watches is what your additional characters are tied to. So there's 4 of them right now. There's a possibility of more coming out in the future. But as you pick up those pocket watches, you can switch between them while you're either roaming the world or in a dungeon. And the upside of being able to switch between character classes, you can balance your party pretty quickly. So let's say you've got all the 4 pocket watches, and you got somebody who's like, hey, I want to be the Time Warrior, I want to be the tank character as I run through it, and you probably want to have a healer in any group. So you're like, okay, I'll be a healer this time, level up that character for a little bit, and then hey, we'll swap over in the next one. You be the healer, I'll be the Time Warrior. The idea is that you can switch between your character classes to level each one up independently, but that cycles advanced players with new players, and additionally allows for us to expand in the future. So as we add more worlds, you can change the type of gameplay, add another character class that is optimized to that type of that new type of world and new type of gameplay.
Cool. I've seen and also heard of and experienced in the game myself the concept of gears. Can you explain what gears are and how they integrate into that system?
You mean like your equipment and stuff?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's gear can appear in different ways, and so you have like your NFTs, which map onto whatever your equipment is and completely change the appearance. So functionally, it'll still have the same stats, but if you want to change the way it looks and presents to other people, then that's what the cosmetic NFTs can change. The gear is tied to your pocket watch, so you can pick up a certain number of items based on your pocket watch. The more rare the pocket watch you pick up, the more items that you can carry on the inside of it as well. You can add that gear essentially into your inventory.
Awesome. So I don't want to be too positive because I think that's boring to listen to. So one of the downsides, I think, of being able to multi-class on the same character is that people perhaps lose that sense of identity. A lot of people identify with certain classes. I'm using the identify in the old sense of the word. They'll identify with different classes, and they will. They like to be like a specialist at that. Is there still ways that people can make their character their own and show that they've put a lot of hours into it? Because that's what it's all about, really, showing what you've achieved.
2 parts. I mean, if you want to specialize, you can. Nobody's forcing you to switch between character classes. So if you just want to tank all the way, or I think in your case, if you want to heal all the way and do nothing, no, I'm just joking. If you want to do nothing by that, you can do that to your heart's desire. Nobody's telling you to switch. And then in terms of like how you peacock a little bit, you kind of show off that like, hey, I'm not just like new to this game. I've been around block for a little bit. The main way that comes is through the NFT collection. And so like, if you find those in-game cosmetics, you can aesthetically change your appearance to whatever you want it to be. And so when you find a more rare item and you're running around, it's something that's very rare that people can visually see as opposed to just running around in your underwear. I think that's a pretty powerful statement that you're somebody people are going to want to partner up with.
Which is the opposite to real life, where running around in your underwear really is a power statement, I think.
Yeah, you either really want to know that person or really, really not.
Usually
there's
not.
There's like no middle ground.
No, not much.
Very polarizing. Yeah.
I think, in fairness, I think it was on the money when you said Rob was a healer. I can already picture, Rob, the kind of the co-streams we're going to do, where you'll be there as the quantum fiction. I'll be running around as Shadowblade, and you'll just be healing me all the livelong day.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we'll see. Just to wind the clock back a little bit, you mentioned, obviously, Rob, you're giving away some Ruby passes, I believe you said there. I was taking a look at the timeline for Big Time earlier today, and you seem to be in this early phase. I think it's called the Ruby Pass holder phase in your timeline at the moment, which is pretty much, the kind of closed out for really. Are there any indications of when we'll see or when we can expect the latter stages in that timeline? So, space holders phase, and then moving into, an invite-only beta, an open beta.
I think the best dates that we can probably give you is Space Access is somewhere in fourth quarter, and then the invite-only beta is probably first quarter of 2023.
Okay.
Somewhere in there, yeah. That's probably... So, there's stuff that happens between now and then, though, so that's not on the timeline. For example, we just did an AMA yesterday to answer some community questions on sockets in space, and because we did change some of the ways that the space worked and bolted together and integrated the utility NFTs, and so we released some additional information on that one, which was not on the original timeline, but I think in a positive way. We released more information earlier, and pretty soon we'll be releasing kind of the rest of the information on the economy. So if you really want to know about the entire upgrading process, the integration of the token, how that ties into upgrading, most of those questions are going to get answered here in the next couple of weeks. We're really just kind of finalizing the packaging for it.
Awesome. And just on that note of kind of moving into a new phase and continuing to develop the game, we've seen within this past week, of course, Blancos came to Epic Games, and there's rumblings that they're looking at getting more Web3 games onto their platform. Are there any plans at the moment for Big Time to feature on? I mean, not just Epic Games, but kind of any kind of medium platform, so you can appeal to a wider audience?
Yeah, we've partnered with a couple organizations that I'll just collectively refer to as aggregators. And so with the kind of explosion in the number of Web3 games that's out there, there's a strong desire to have a Steam of Web3. And it's going to look a little bit different with the blockchain component inside of it, but there should be an easy way for people to find a variety of different games that's not just through brute force Googling or word of mouth on Twitter. So we've partnered with a couple of them. Some of they're all in various stages. None of them are well developed because it's still such a new space, and the number of games that have like an exploding star, have risen to prominence and then disappeared over the last 18 months has made some of that stability a little challenging. But we've been around for a while, so now we're able to partner up and establish more of those long-term relationships. The main thing, though, is that honestly, OpenLoot, which is the parent to Big Time, is kind of our aspirations. It's studio-esque in our ability to onboard other games.
Yeah, that was my follow-up question to that. Is what could you tell us a little bit about OpenLoot and what role it plays, because obviously that overcomes some of what the Web3 Steams are offering with the marketplace and so on. So what is OpenLoot?
OpenLoot is basically everything that a game needs to come to market besides the actual game development. And so if you think about all that goes into a game besides the actual core game loop, there's a ton. And oftentimes, somewhat tragically, the best game isn't the one that actually makes it to the end because of all those other stumbling blocks. So things like for Web3 games, they have particular challenges with it bouncing the economy, incorporating tokens, blockchain in general, loot boxes, marketplace development, marketing, fundraising, all of those things. That's where we can do a lot to help out. And that's the end-to-end solution that we try to bring to whatever game wants to come out under OpenLoot using the model that we provided and were successful with during Big Time. And so we've partnered with 3 games so far, but we're reviewing game applications every day, and so there's going to be more coming.
Fantastic. You briefly mentioned tokens there. Again, kind of looking into your white paper, you mentioned that at some point in the future there will be a Big Time token available after launch. Yeah. Are there any kind of inklings at the moment as to what that token might be used for, or what utility it might offer to the player?
Yeah. So the main thing it's going to be used for is upgrading your NFTs. So let's say you find a level 1 sorters chess piece that's in the game, and you want to upgrade it and make it a more rare item. You go out there, you find that level 1, you bring it back to your forge, you combine it with the in-game tokens, cook it in there for a few days along with some other ingredients, and at the end of that is going to be a more rare version. It's going to be that higher level item. So it's a key ingredient for upgrading. I think it's important to say what it's not. There's not going to be an IDO. There's not going to be an ICO. You have to play the game in order to get it. And then perhaps most importantly, it's not tied to governance. So really, if you want to take a position inside of big time, it's going to come through space. It's not going to come through token. That's going to function much more like a in-game currency than anything else.
That's interesting. So there's another benefit that I could see of guilds in the game is I think when I was speaking to someone at Big Time before, I don't think it was you, but someone I was speaking to was saying about how they want major guilds to buy the biggest spaces, and then they can become kind of crafting hubs and trading hubs. Is that something you're looking at?
That sounds like something I would have said, even if it wasn't me. That's good that multiple people at Big Time are saying the same thing.
Yep.
So yes, and broadly speaking, I view guilds in the future as being a large source of the supply of cosmetics inside of Big Time. So we don't sell any skins ourselves. Like, you can't buy a skin from us. They dropped inside the game, and then somebody put that on the marketplace on their own volition.
Right.
That's all from them. It's all player to players. And as that drop, I mean, just by natural supply and demand, there's a finite number of these items out there. The number that are going to be out in circulation is going to go down, and it's going to be other players or guilds who are putting them on the marketplace. They're really going to become the supply. So when they have big space and are collecting a lot of the tokens, they're going to be the ones who are generating those cosmetics for free-to-play or non-guild associated players to design, or they're going to be the demand. That's going to be their customer, for lack of a better word. That's kind of how I view it, because we're not the ones selling the skins.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
So there's one follow-up question I have to that. So you are obviously focused on a community experience and a very social experience, which I love, because I think MMOs have moved away from that, particularly in the last few years. I don't think they've quite realised. World of Warcraft came under so much criticism for it because, you know, in the early days there were no quality of life tools, and people had to just become communities within the game, and then those communities have become like Method Esports was a WoW guild that built a community. So I do really like that, but my only worry for Big Time at the moment, or one of the few sort of concerns I had, was how group focused it is. It isn't particularly geared at single player games and single player gamers, and I wondered if it's something that you're looking at, and whether there's going to be more solo content coming.
There is. That first time user experience, like you mentioned, is absolutely critical. Like, if you don't have somebody to immediately play with, you're like, man, I'm dying a lot. Like, this is not as much fun. That was my first time user experience, and we actually did respond quite a bit to that. Added some newbie levels and some newbie dungeons. But yes, I think it's on our timeline. We're going to roll out more of that solo gameplay that'll be a little bit easier to integrate in some of the additional worlds we're going to have. But absolutely, it's a big part of where we kind of need to go next to accommodate single players up to large group players.
Good stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. Kind of more into your ballpark of being kind of the guild lead. I'm a massive fan of group gameplay. I think some of my most fun experiences in MMOs have been, I don't know if either of you have played Guild Wars 2, but the World versus World PvP was my life for 18 months, 2 years back in the day, and that just engrossed me. And I've never really found any kind of multiplayer RPG that's given me a kind of a similar PvP experience. And with Big Time having that kind of the focus on guilds, the focus on working with your fellow player, are there any plans in the future of Big Time to have these really immersive, cohesive PvP experiences where you can really build, strong bonds with your guild mates and with the other people that you play with?
Yeah, friendships forged in the heat of battle. No, I mean, it's like a real thing. Like, indefinitely in the future, I would say yes. We've done some internal testing with PvP. I've seen it. It looks good. It functions well. But the key thing that was challenging for us is balancing it right. Because if you launch a PvP that's not well balanced, like gamers will burn down the metaverse. And so, at least through the timeline that we've released so far, it's just going to be a PvE game with improvements to solo gameplay and more worlds and more content to play. But then after that, in terms of where we go next, we're kind of looking for some stronger signals from the community. Like, do you want PvP next? Do you want esports next? Do you want VR or console? We have some flexibility in terms of where we go in the future. And we really do kind of listen to our community of what one will be the most important for us to develop next.
So kind of on that note, how, I know you've said you're flexible there, but kind of how flexible are you? Are you prepared to say, let's say internally you're thinking, okay, this will be our next development. If you have this kind of big kind of rush from the community that's like, no, we want this thing next, would you be kind of prepared to shift your development direction to kind of cater to what the player base wants at that moment in time?
Yes.
Good.
and
Perfect.
You know, and let me tell you why. That's a very easy question for us to answer. When I think about what Big Time does really well, it did really well, is you put the user first. And we looked at, or rather the founders at the time looked at the battlefield of Web3 games that are out there, and they're like, hey, there's some problems. These are not fun games, and they're all built around some sort of play to earn mechanic. And it's not really a game, it's like a job. And there's not to take anything away from those games, but that's not what your traditional gamer is looking for. And so it was like, this need not be mutually exclusive. Bring that same quality of gameplay into Web3, and then give them the ownership part. So start with the user first. What does the user want? What does the user need? And I think that the user wanted to own their assets, and they wanted to have a better game in Web3. And that's always the way it's going to be. It's always going to start with the user first. So if all of our users are like, we want this over, we want PvP over anything else, it's going to make that decision pretty easy in my mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
If that was an easy question, I want to make it harder.
Okay.
So I've played a lot of MMOs over the last 20 years. So I've played quite a few MMOs, and there's always this dichotomy of the games that don't listen to their community, and then there's the games that have started to. This is quite a recent addition in gaming. It's the games that really want to engage with their community more and listen to what they want, which is great. And I think that is the best way to go. However, I want to know, how do you avoid the game becoming a kind of, have you ever heard the phrase, a camel is a horse designed by committee? It's kind of having a go at the camel, which isn't fair. But I think the problem is that sometimes a game can become, it feels as if it lacks direction when you cater to everything the community wants, because the community can still be wrong. Even though you've got the wisdom of crowds, they can be wrong, and they can think they want something, and then it not be the best for the game. So how do you overcome that?
Yeah, the groupthink temptation is always going to be there. If you're just like, all right, we're going to vote on what we do next, you're going to generally get a decision that's pushed towards a median. Or probably worse, you're going to end up doing something that's already been done. Somebody's going to be like, I saw this in GTA, or I saw this in Fortnite, we should do that. And then you're going to have a game that's like a bits and pieces, and it's not going to develop well. One of those things that I think we developed very creatively was the pocket watches. All that being said, how do we avoid it? So the main thing is, like, as we develop something through the creative process and go out there and we test it, we get the feedback on it. So as the developers develop something, we test it internally, we do more testing internally, and then we bring in a small group of players who try that, and then as we release it to these early access pass holders, we take their feedback and then iterate on it and improve on it. So eventually, when we do get the global launch of the game, it's going to be a better feedback. But where that feedback comes from is like multiple pieces throughout. And so that's kind of where the feedback and listening and working with the community really comes into it. The other part of it is being comfortable answering uncomfortable questions. That's the other part where I'll admit it. Like, the AMA I did yesterday was like not fun. Like, this is pretty good. Like, this is not bad. But there were some people yesterday who were like saying some pretty tough things about what the socket changes were. But it was important that we said it and we were upfront about it. And you may not like the changes, although I think they do benefit the user. But what you can't kind of doubt the team for is that we didn't put ourselves out there and we weren't as honest and open and upfront about it as we could have been. And I think gamers appreciate that. What they don't like is not kind of having any heads up, and then something just gets nerfed away from them and they don't have a reason why. I think that really pisses them off.
Yeah, I think not just with gamers, but I think with Web3 and blockchain communities in general, where there is this increased push for transparency and being communicative. I mean, but part of my role is I'm also the head of content for Atomic Hub, which is a marketplace, and I think we're going through a very similar situation at the moment where we're having to fix one of our systems, and it's a system that our users interact with on a daily basis. Every time they access our site, and any change you make to it has this furore of people on one side being like, no, this is terrible, and the other side being like, but I kind of see where you're coming at. And it's just being open and honest and communicative. It's the best way to overcome that. I mean, at the end of the day, I think we're all coming from a good place, and we all want whatever's best for the respective products that we're working on. Just to change the air of the topic we've got going, I was again looking into the white paper. I read a lot of white papers. It's the thing I love to do. So Big Time is built on Ethereum, but it has this what's described on the website as a proprietary vault system, which allows some of those transactions to be conducted using a centralized in-game database rather than the blockchain. Could you perhaps explain what transactions those are, or how that system is more beneficial to the player or to the game in general?
It's more beneficial to people who are not comfortable with Web3. And so if you don't like crypto or NFTs or setting up a wallet, then you can still take advantage of the quantifiably scarce in-game items that Big Time has. And so those items, those NFTs that drop inside the game, while they're in the game and on the marketplace, they're technically off-chain. Almost like a layer zero solution. And that vault technology, you said, allows you to mint those items onto a variety of different chains when you want to move it outside the game. So if you don't want to do that, then you don't have to. But the idea is that we created an ecosystem that's much more accessible for people who have no understanding of Web3. And I think that's a large portion of the Web2 community. Like, I don't know if you remember setting up your wallet for the first time. It probably was not pleasant. It kind of sucks, and it's kind of terrifying. And a lot of people have not entered into Web3 games because of that. And so for us, we just made it very easy to get in there. And then with the fact that those transactions are off chain, it allows things like credit card purchases and bank deposits, which is a much more accessible, familiar system that we think is just going to give us a much larger player base.
Yeah. It's interesting. I know some games have come under criticism for doing things off chain. There's still people are still trying to find their feet in Web3 in all areas, and blockchain gaming is no different. And we're still trying to work out what to put on chain and what not to. Have you come under any criticism about centralizing some of this when it's meant to be decentralized?
A little bit, but not so much, because I think when we articulate why we do it, people get it. And especially when you kind of recall like your first time setting up a wallet, it's kind of terrifying. And imagine if you just want to try out a game. It's like, oh, I want to try it out. Like you're saying, I got to set up a wallet and deposit this, and why do I have to attach this to my Chrome browser? What is this extension just to play a game? It gets confusing. And so the idea is that we think we're probably closer to like a Web 2.5 game, in that we think we're going to do a lot to build more trust in Web 3. And once people start using these NFTs and it's a seamless part of their gaming life, and they're going to like the rest of the stuff that also comes along with Web 3.
Yeah, I like the idea of Web 2.5 games, because I think I write a lot about the metaverse and some of the problems people have in terms of the vision for it and the technology not quite being there. And John and I talk about onboarding all the time, and it's so difficult to get right in blockchain gaming. And you're absolutely right. There's already resistance and friction with traditional gamers and Web3 gaming, and if they have to go through setting up a custodial wallet and writing down keys and everything, I mean, you've lost them before they've even tried your game. No matter how good it is, you're not getting them through the door. So fully agree on that one.
Humans have a bias towards the status quo. Generally, something can be almost twice as good as the original, and they don't want to change it. And so, can we realistically build a game that's twice as good as World of Warcraft to get them to try out a game with blockchain involved? Probably not. Don't get me wrong. I think we build an incredible game, but to say that the answer to onboarding more people into blockchain games is to raise those barriers even higher, I think is somewhat counterintuitive when you phrase it that way. But nonetheless, I think that is how the problem works. And like years from now, when every game has blockchain involved in it, and everybody is as familiar with setting up a wallet as they are with checking their bank account or checking account on their phone, then I think it's a bit of a different discussion. But for right now, we need to get that population in there. We need to grow this gaming size community, because Web2 games by daily and monthly active users is several orders of magnitude bigger than any Web3 game that's out there right now. And let's go fix those problems. Let's bring in these new people.
Kind of down that line of thinking, what do you think is or would cause the biggest kind of influx of gamers moving from traditional games to Web3? Is it one amazing game like we hope Big Time will be, that just gallivants all of these Web2 players to come check out Web3? Is it, or is part of it education? Is part of it, getting people more familiar with Web3? Is it just making onboarding easier, or is it just a mix of all of those?
I think it's all of those. I don't think any one thing is going to cause that barrier to come down in one fell swoop. But I would say it's going to be ease, education, and then a bad experience in Web 2. So ease, education, and a bad experience in Web 2. So it's got to be easier. It's got to be easier to make a wallet, to own your assets, to move them around. Education, you got to understand what the benefits are. Realize, hey, it's not all a Ponzi scheme. It's not all about like somebody trying to take you for a run. This stuff actually gives more power back to you as a player, as an individual. You can actually claw back your data from big scary corporations, and by putting those items on chain, you take that control of your life and your experience even more. And then finally, I think some people are going to need a bad experience in Web 2. Something is going to happen, probably where people are going to be like, man, either my data or my items or assets got wiped or something like that. Man, I really wish I owned that. And they're going to get frustrated, and that's where they're going to kind of look at what are the advantages of what blockchain or Web3 in general can do for them. They're going to be like, I'm going to make the jump now. I think those three things: ease, education, and a bad experience in Web 2.
It's interesting. The bad experience in Web 2, I think, is probably the most difficult of them all. And I wonder if it will be a case of, I think we've become numb to a lot of these bad experiences. I mean, yeah. I have whinged countless times about games I've bought, and then there's the game I mentioned on when we interviewed Michael Rubinelli of Wax Studios. There is a game that I bought, which I've never been able to re-find, but it was made by Sony Entertainment, and it was an FPS, and I really enjoyed it, and I bought a load of microtransactions, and then they said, oh, we're shutting the game down, we didn't get enough players, and I mean, my money just went with it. So I've had a lot of those experiences, and I've become a little bit numb to them. And I wonder if it's necessary that we have a really, perhaps something big in Web 2 happening, like a real cataclysmic event like Fortnite removing a load of skins or something, or whether we just need more examples of Web 3 doing it right and people seeing the benefits, which I think the latter's more likely, but it's also going to be much slower. And I don't think there's any way around that. But I mean, I don't know how we can get use cases in front of people other than just time and keep putting the games out. And I think, yeah, as you say, I think education's key.
Relative deprivation is a powerful motivator. And generally speaking, the word of mouth is going to be about 10 times as effective as any marketing or advertisement you're ever going to get. So I think, honestly, a big part of it is people like yourselves. You show that you're going to be playing a game and you're able to own and trade your assets like it's nothing. And I love talking with Fortnite people, because I'm like, you guys should love blockchain. Why would you not? I was like, you buy all of these chains, and almost the worst thing you could do is buy a skin while you're trying to save up for another skin. It's like, you buy a $10 one, then a $20 one, then a $100 one. It's like, all those ones you bought before are just hanging out in the digital closet and you can't do anything with them. And imagine if you just resold it. Or if you tell that to a parent that's been like swiping the credit card for their kids, they're going to be like, yes, I totally get that. I will do nothing that I can't resell at the end. I think it makes sense to them. But a lot of it is just going to come from people playing the games and being like, hey, this is good. This isn't like a get-rich-quick Ponzi scheme. I'm playing this because it's a good game. Come try it out. And I think that will do a lot to hit that inflection.
I'd never quite thought about NFTs in an MMO in particular in that way, and the fact that, you know, going back when I was playing WoW or Final Fantasy or Guild Wars or whatever it is, the exact same thing would happen to me with cosmetics, and I think I purchased less cosmetics because of it. I'd always look at something cool and think, I really want that, but if I go to this dungeon, I'm going to get something cooler, or, you know, at this level, I'll get this cool. And you just, me personally, I kept moving on, and I ended up not really getting involved in cosmetics because I can never recoup that value. You know, I would use one cosmetic for a week and then, ooh, flashy new thing, and then, ooh, flashy new thing. And it just kind of turned me off it entirely. But I think that was something that in Web3, where, you know, if I had a cosmetic and then was able to trade it on a marketplace, would really get me to interact with that system more. And the same with mounts, or, you know, any of these other, you know, cosmetic heavy systems in MMOs. I think it will entice players like me, and I'm sure many others, to interact with these systems more often, because there is more inherent value in interacting with them. Going back to the gameplay, Big Time uses procedurally generated instances, and you know, as someone who has run, you know, Sunken Temple, Blackrock Depths thousands of times, Copperbell Mines in Final Fantasy more times than I can think, having a procedurally generated dungeon to me is far more appealing than having the same static dungeon I run through 6 times an hour over and over and over again. So what do you think that with dungeons being such kind of or instances rather, being such a core part of the gameplay, what do you think that adds to the player experience?
There's a couple things. This is a good one, because this is like multi-part. So I want to first start off with, it limits cheating. It limits botting, because each time that there's a new dungeon and they're located in different places, it actually significantly reduces the ability for somebody to program something that can just like cheat and farm their way through, because it's different every time. Unless they make a sentient AI platform, in which case we're screwed anyways. So it does a lot to prevent anti-cheating. Number 2, keeps the content fresh. So it's essentially, nobody has run through every possible dungeon inside of Big Time. The layout, the loot, the enemy on the inside each time is different. So it's a fresh experience every single time that you run through it. And then number 3, like, it makes it exciting, I think. Like, as you go through it, you're like, maybe I dropped into a dungeon before this, but it's now my chance of like finding an NFT or a different like cool in-game item is totally reset every single time. It's like rolling a dice. You know, it's what you roll on this time has nothing to do with what happened the previous time. So if you're looking for in-game stuff and you want it to be cool, that keeps that experience fresh and new for you.
That's a good answer, particularly with the botting. I hadn't thought about that. Botting is a big problem, particularly with dungeons, because of the layout. I mean, you can just key map almost, and in the simplest way, botting in the most simple way can still be effective. There is one question that I must ask, because as you know, we have a streamer at Token Gamer called Super Dope, and he plays Big Time a lot and is a big fan of it. And he had 2 questions, and they're similar. So one is about whether you will add quests into the open world, so there's more to do in the open world, because most of it's instance at the moment. And 2, is there going to be storyline implemented into the gameplay, which kind of, you know, ties in with the quest as well, I guess.
Yeah, yes and yes. So number 1 is there will be quests and an ability to interact more substantially with the lore in our next world, which is Epic City. It's an entirely different world, which we have a different name for it inside the game, but for people who are not as familiar, it's like a different world. It looks different. It's a different style of gameplay. There's more of these individual type quests, and additionally, it allows you to do things besides just like combat and orientation. So the gameplay will be pretty different. And each time we release a new world, we've got like 4 or 5 worlds lined up over the next couple of years. the gameplay will be very different each time. It's not just going to be more iterations of what you can currently do. The second part is the lore. I struggle with the lore because we have a novel written about the whole lore of Big Time, where all these different characters tie in, and then how we release these additional worlds. And unfortunately, we just can't go public with all of it right now. It's like, I mean, like physically speaking, it's like stored on my computer, which is like just outside of camera, like right here. It's like right there. But yes, there is a ton of lore stuff about how it ties in with the time travel, the personal pocket universe, the different styles of gameplay. All of that is pretty intricately woven together, and it ties into the non-playable characters that you interact with. That is coming. I don't have a good date for when more of that storyline comes out with. I would guess it's going to be somewhere in between that space access and the invite-only beta. So probably by like first quarter of next year, I think there's going to be a lot more of the lore for people to sink their teeth into.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I like that.
Fantastic. Well, I hope Super Dope's happy with those. With those answers. Yeah, I think I've been watching a bit of Super Dope play it on stream. He's been loving the game so far, and I've yet to play it on stream. I have played it off stream, but I am very much looking forward to sharing Big Time more with our followers, and getting reviews out, getting that content, because I think it really is, it's unique when it comes to Web3 games at the moment. And I think both me and Rob, we've talked about really cool trading card games that have NFTs in them at the moment, or really cool games in other genres, but there's nothing that scratches that kind of that RPG multiplayer itch in this Web3 space right now, quite like Big Time does. And I'm looking forward to playing more and more of it. I think before we head into the kind of the softer outro-esque questions, or heading towards an exit, let's hit you with the last kind of big one, which would be, what do you think is the biggest problem in blockchain gaming now? And we've talked a bit about play to earn versus playing for fun, and onboarding, etc. But what do you think is the biggest problem right now, and how do you think we go about fixing it?
The number one problem I have with blockchain gaming right now is trust from non-players. That's the biggest thing. Like when I reach out to like a Twitch streamer who plays like Valorant or something like that, a substantial portion of them, as soon as they hear the term NFT or blockchain, are like, don't care, don't want to listen to it anymore. That's externally facing. I would say the biggest problem I have with blockchain gaming right now is that there is a strong emphasis on play to earn, and that has dwarfed the game part, the play part. And I think games have suffered accordingly, and I think a lot of users have suffered accordingly because of that. And I'm somewhat boomer-esque in my thinking that a game should be played for fun. And if you want to earn and own stuff on it, it should be an optional part. It should not be a required part. And I think that's super important for onboarding new users. But also, I think a lot of people have tried to sell some snake oil with play to earn games and some perfect tokenomics that they just tweak some little things and they got it just right. Now everybody can be a millionaire by playing their game. I think a lot of people have had really bad experiences with that, and it's done a lot of bad press, honestly, for the rest of the blockchain community. So that's my biggest problem with blockchain gaming right now.
So before we get to these soft questions, I'm going to chuck in one more curveball because it's 11:52
you like your surprises,
at night. Yeah, I feel like maybe I'm grumpier at night. I don't know. Who knows? So you are creating a Web3 game, which is this early on in Web3 gaming is tremendously difficult. But you're also creating an MMO, and John and I love MMOs, as we've said a number of times, and I can't see myself loving a genre of game more than MMOs for the rest of my life. I've always found they've scratched that addictive part of my brain, and there is one obvious problem with MMOs, and that is they fail so often. I mean, we've seen studios with billions of dollars behind them, and they just can't seem to capture it quite right. And what you're doing right now by creating what I believe looks to be a AAA MMO. I mean, there's, in terms of the fluidity of gameplay, the art style, the graphics, as a whole, everything looks AAA to me. But at the heart of it, you're still creating a Web3 MMO, which has got to be the hardest challenge in game development right now. So why? How and why? I've left the best to last. I really have.
That's good. It's a good question. I feel like anytime you go into the MMO territory, you're inevitably trying to like come toe to toe with World of Warcraft, which is, I don't know, non-quantifiably, it's probably the most famous game of all time. It's up there, probably between that and Pokemon. I think a part of it was we thought that the MMO audience and that style of user would most benefit from blockchain and ownership. That's a big part of it. The other part of it is, if you look at kind of what OpenLoot is doing, we have a variety of different games, and we also think like more systemically like that. So within OpenLoot, we also have a racing game, we have a tank battle royale game. We're going to have a first-person shooter game as well. So like OpenLoot will be quite well balanced. Big Time is first though. And I think it was we tried to do something different. Can you think? So we can all name good Web2 style MMO games, but can you tell me a good Web3 MMO style game? It's a lot.
No, that's part of the problem, though.
Exactly, but there are more types of the other types of games. People have tried to develop FPSs and racing games or card games, like you mentioned, inside of Web3, but people kind of shied away from the challenge of building a Web3 MMO, and that's kind of where we wanted to go.
Okay.
And part of it because it was like, oh wow, nobody's even going to try and step up to the plate here.
Yeah, I mean, someone has to, and it's hard, but the rewards are there. And I fully agree with you that I think I wrote an article about this in about 2018, saying that MMOs are one of the genres that stand the most to gain the most from blockchain technology, particularly with the way that loot drops, rare loot drops. And on that note, I was on Twitter earlier, and I don't know if you paid this guy, but he is doing work for you because he uploaded a clip and he's in a dungeon with some friends and an NFT drops and he got the big NFT drop animation and sound and stuff, and I just think it's so well done. It's got that thing where you just keeps you wanting to grind until you get an NFT drop. So yeah, high five on that one.
Is he a big buff guy? Scott Herman or the Buffessor? The Buffessor? I say it wrong every time.
I don't think it was him. I can't remember. I didn't follow him. It's just because I interact with so much big time stuff. Twitter was ramming it down my throat. I appreciate it because it was really good content. But yeah, I love that NFT drop thing.
If they posted it on Twitter, we didn't pay him.
No, I was being a bit
totally
facetious
serious.
with that.
Yeah. No, totally. No, but I mean, I want people to know that. Like, we didn't pay for any. We didn't pay for a single one of those posts. None. Like, there are some people who play big time on our Twitch, but that's it.
Yeah.
Everybody else is like, that is organic. Because part of it too is like Web3 people can smell a shill. They can really smell it.
Especially now.
Yeah, especially now. So if they go on there and they're like, big time, best Web3 game, best good times, like everybody's gonna be like, no. But it goes a lot farther if people do it organically. So it's like, all right, we'll just make a game that's actually enjoyable.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm sick of shilling in this space. I think we all are. But 50 Ruby passes on tokengamer.io. Right, should we do some of these softball questions now we've asked some of the hard stuff?
I'm ready.
Yeah, let's go into those. So, fairly easy one, but other than big time, of course, what kind of blockchain NFT enabled games are on your radar in the space?
Oh man, come on.
Not a softball.
That's not a softball. They're gonna know we're watching them. I'd be like, my gut instinct is to be like, none. We fear nobody. We fear nobody. Web3 games I really like right now. I obviously Alluvium, Star Atlas, Axie Infinity, kind of continue to watch them, each for very different reasons. Like the Star Atlas spaceships is beautiful. Alluvium has had some incredible trailers, and they're doing some very innovative stuff. Axie, when I kind of think of like it as Sky Mavis, like they just kind of continue to develop and iterate, and so I think they're going to continue rolling out some stuff. But I watch pretty much any major game that's coming out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, when listeners to this podcast or players of Big Time think Big Time in their head, what do you hope they think, or what images are you hoping they think of?
I think I hope that their first reaction is, that looks fun, I want to try that. I think it's very, very simple. We want them to try it, and then I think that that's like their initial reaction we want from any trailer, and then any additional research from 30 seconds to like an hour onwards, they're going to be like, I really want to play this game. For all the other reasons we've described. I want them to like get their attention, be like, I've never seen something like this before, and now I've done some research, now I really want to play.
Cool. I think that was the first thing that struck me about Big Time, funnily enough. I saw a clip of it, I was like, I want to play that. That looks like it's right down my alley. Rob, do you have any quick fires you want to throw out?
No, but they would be difficult. I want you to know they would have been difficult. If it wasn't midnight, who knows, I might have had something else.
Let's do some quirky, unusual ones. If you could give one piece of advice, doesn't have to be about gaming, doesn't have to be about Web3, to our listeners, what would it be? These aren't as easy as I put them across to people.
Oh man, never sleep with wet socks at night. That'll probably take you pretty far. Always tip your waiters. If you're trying to get involved with a Web3 project, make sure you trust the team. They have good experience and you believe in what they're doing, and it's got to be doing something different. Don't bet on the Jets for football. I mean, I'm trying to hit as much like quick stuff. Like, what can you take with you forever?
There's not many times where you get advice about Web3 and trench foot in the same piece of advice.
And football. So
yeah, you've covered a broad spectrum there. That's good.
I hope that somebody like years from now reaches out and they're like, "Hey, I was going through a tough spot in my life. I was in a trench." And then I just remembered. Yeah, I remembered. I was listening to a Web3 gaming podcast, and I was like, you know what? That random guy. I'm gonna take my socks off.
Out of interest, what was your first MMO?
Honestly, I was not so much of an MMO player until I started playing Big Time. In terms of like substantial amount of time playing, Big Time is the only MMO I've really, really played. For me, God, I kind of hate answering this question because it dates me. But like my formative games when I was growing up was obviously Pokemon, Zelda, Halo, and Super Smash Brothers. And each very different kind of like styles of gameplay. They're very individual, up to like Super Smash Brothers, which for me will always be about the memories of like playing with other people. And you can see some of those mechanics inside of Big Time, and that really does appeal to me.
Yeah, that definitely puts you in my age bracket rather than John's, I think.
Yeah.
Well, you were selling this. What was that random PS2 cosmetic looking thingy you've talked about on the podcast before, Rob? That dates you more than Smash Bros.
I don't even know what you're referring to.
It's like game. Oh, we'll
that shows my age. I can't even remember what you're talking about. I'm so old.
We'll discuss it afterwards. But anyway, before we wrap it up, Matt, anything? Is there anything to add from your side, or anywhere? Or any websites, any socials that you would like our listeners to go and check out?
If for some reason you're not fortunate enough to get one of the Ruby passes from the fantastic people I've been chatting with here for the next hour, check out our Twitter and check out our Twitch. We do giveaways pretty frequently through the two of those things. Honestly, Ruby passes are for people who are going to play the game. Like, it's not how much money you have, it's not who you know. If you want to play the game, then we're going to be able to get you inside the game, and that's generally the conduit that we use it for. So either Twitter or Twitch. But again, I can't. I'm going to help show here. Check out your guys' website. Go get a Ruby Pass there. Start playing the game. We'd love to have you guys in there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think that is everything from us, Rob. So Matt, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure, and I am looking forward to playing some more Big Time for sure. So thank you very much, and yeah, hopefully we can talk to you again soon sometime.
Fantastic, love it, guys. Thank you so much. This has been a very enjoyable AMA. Way more enjoyable than some of the ones in recent memory. But thank you so much. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to chatting again.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Okay, thank you very much to Matt for giving his time to be on episode 39. And as I just said to you, Rob, I think that's possibly one of the better episodes we've done so far. It was a really nice flowing discussion. Matt was a great guy to talk to, and
yeah,
it's nice to just get three MMO nerds in a circle talking about all the cool things we like.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Really, like I'm happy to talk to anyone about MMOs. So But usually that gets you shunned on the bus, so it's nice to have a platform to do it. But yeah, Matt was such a great guest. I enjoyed that episode. That was good stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing some more big time for sure. Rob, where can we find you?
You can find me on tokengamer.io, where we post daily blockchain gaming news, reviews, interviews, everything, lots and lots of different types of content. And then YouTube/Token Gamer News, which is video content where we're posting stream highlights and other bits and pieces. What is series where we look at games in depth from a sort of a beginner's perspective. Then we have twitch.tv/Token Gamer, which is Jonah, super dope, who is playing a lot of big time, actually. I'm not sure what he was playing today. I think he was doing a very controversial tier list of blockchain games, which always goes down well. So he was doing that. So make sure you keep an eye out for that. As I shielded several times, we're doing a giveaway of 50 Ruby passes. So if you want to play big time, enter that. 50 passes for free entry into the beta. I think that's everything. Where can people find you, Mr. John?
So, Mr. John. Oh, I've gone up in title. Other than Squire John or whatever the medieval term you want to call me. Anyway,
Squire's worse than Mr. I'd be suggesting you're my Squire, which would be...
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that.
I mean, you're welcome to Squire for me. I haven't got much call for it. But
I think as we establish in this podcast, you're the healer, so I think the power dynamics already...
That's true. You can't be the roguey class. I need you to be like a tanky dude on the front line if I'm going to heal you. I'm not healing some guy who's sitting in stealth. Come on now.
That's true. Hey, when there's some big old... bosses and dungeons and we definitely need to play big time together at some point. I think it'll make great content. Anyway,
outro rather than us rambling.
For where you can find me and what I do, it's nftinsider.io for the latest NFT news. We've been talking about all sorts of stuff. It's been a very busy week in Web3. As I said in the pod, Blankos on Epic. There's about 8 esports orgs have partnered with Guild of Guardians. Oh god, there's so much stuff that's gone on. Newsletter from us, interviews from us, all that cool stuff. It's nftinsider_io on Twitter and Instagram. Those are our 2 most prominent socials. Giveaways, retweets, fun stuff. There you go. For me personally, it's at Hydropowered, HYDROPWRD on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Clubhouse, and all those other fantastic platforms. Twitter would be the best one for daily tweets, although I am now streaming every Wednesday. I was hoping to stream today. We're recording this on Tuesday. The Blockchain Ballers open beta was supposed to go live, but here there's a delay. So fingers crossed. By the time, I think by the time this is live, you'll have already seen me streaming Blockchain Ballers. But there we go. And that is, I believe, everything from me. So, Rob, anything to add?
No.
Okay, good. Episode 39. Of the Mint One podcast. Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you watch us on YouTube, like and subscribe would be fantastic. Hit the bell icon, be notified of our latest videos, and leave a comment with people you'd like us to interview, topics you want us to discuss, all that good stuff. And if you're on Spotify or Apple, a 5-star podcast review would be amazing. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching, and we hope you tune in again next week.